All right, let's do a piece of sound. Let's do this China Belt and Road Initiative. Basically, and I just want to give a flavor of this. We're going to be doing more China coverage. But I think the kind of angle of this sort of multi-colonial competition in Africa is significant. And also the fact that Africa has been a site of this kind of neo-mercantile Chinese approach, which in some ways I could see is very appealing because, as I've said so many times before, it eliminates the bullshit. But I also do want to give people a sense of the real scale of these agreements. There's long-term implications for the global economy and also the ecology of the continent. This is an Al Jazeera report that's going to frame it of President Xi's recent visit to the continent and the Belt and Road Initiative.
Chinese President Xi Jinping is on a four-nation tour of Africa with stops in Senegal, Rwanda, South Africa and Mauritius. The visit to Senegal was Xi's first trip to West Africa as leader. At a joint news conference with Senegalese President Macky Sall, he said Africa was China's natural ally and announced several new deals.
We have attended the signature of a slew of cooperation agreements in various domains, ranging from justice, economic and technical cooperation, infrastructures, promotion of human capital and civil aviation. The development of China will bring more opportunities to Africa, and the development of Africa will bring a new energy to the development of China.
Well, China is Africa's biggest trading partner. According to the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, trade between the two sides accounted for nearly $170 billion last year. Chinese exports to Africa reached $94.7 billion, while African countries imported $75 billion worth of Chinese goods. Beijing has several large-scale projects across the continent as part of its so-called Belt and Road Initiative, which aims to provide a link to 70 countries across Southeast Asia, the Middle East, Europe and Africa. The Chinese government has also provided at least $86 billion in loans over a decade to finance over 3,000 projects in Africa. That includes a highway linking Senegal's capital, Dakar, to its second main city, Touba, and Ethiopia's $475 million light railway system in Addis Ababa, of which 85% was funded by China.
There was a book that came out in 2007, I believe. It was called Second World by a guy named Parag Khanna. Parag's a very nice guy and was helpful to me, actually, when I was kind of getting my feet out of college. We have very different politics, but the argument at the time was that there's three models of globalizing. There's the U.S. Laissez-faire, deregulate, corporate-friendly, and then have the kind of vestiges of democracy model. Then there's an EU model, which has been detonated through austerity and the rules of the euro currency, and obviously what the center has done to countries like Greece and Spain to some extent in terms of implementing austerity and hurting labor. But at the time, the argument was that the European Union was the global model that was essentially like exporting models of social democracy, because the EU did implement better labor rules, open borders, and had some social safety net. And then China, this kind of like China rise narrative, which was just starting to emerge at the time, was just the promise of efficiency, fast delivery, and non-hypocrisy. And that has actually really continued. And so when you look at the Chinese approach to Africa, there's now a lot more objections from African activists in terms of ecological issues, in terms of labor issues, in terms of support for tyrannical governments. But at the same time, the flip of the cut of that red tape in this very sped up process is that much more significant infrastructure. And now with the EU still sort of playing some, people like France still play very paternalistic and old line racist games in Africa. Macron has been incredibly unimpressive in this regard, just as he's been domestically, and the United States kind of contradictory moves. China's still there in a very significant way, and it's something that we're going to cover more and watch more.